Once we collaborated with the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary, you see here today that this is a big thing for us, for the nation, not just for the nation, but for the whole community.
And I always say on the first day we had 5,000 strangers. On the third day we had 7,000 friends. And on the fifth day we lost 7,000 family members. We became very close to those people. They became close to us.
Welcome to This Week Uncut, where we take a look at the week's top stories from CHCO-TV and The Courier. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.
We begin this week with a letter sent from the Municipal District of St. Stephen over harassment of political leaders, but also its staff.
This has obviously caught the attention of a lot of people in the community. Tell us a little bit about your conversation with Mayor McEachran after receiving this letter.
Yeah, so we got the letter sort of late on a Thursday evening with a statement that sort of spoke to the rising level of incivility and harassment that not only they were facing as a council, but their staff as well. And there certainly have been moments that over the last year that I've been here where I've witnessed where things have kind of been just on the edge of between, criticism, but also maybe a bit personal. And so I wanted to have a conversation with him because he has spoken with us about this before. And it's important to note that this is not unique to New Brunswick. Municipal leaders and staff, administrators across the country are facing this new level of criticism and incivility that organizations and provinces are trying to deal with. But the statement said, in recent months, we have witnessed an alarming rise in public incivility directed towards members of this council, municipal staff and volunteers. While a spirited debate and accountability are the hallmarks of a healthy democracy, there is a growing trend of personal attacks, harassment, and intimidation that must be addressed.
And I think sometimes in a small community, when we all know each other, sometimes it can be easier to go into a gray area where we do know each other personally. When we see each other in the grocery store, it's often as neighbors and not just in our roles within the community. But tell us a little more about your conversation with Mayor McEachran. What exactly is he hoping to come out of putting this letter forward?
Well, I think the idea is that they were trying to speak to the issue, like talk about it out loud. Like there's always, at the back of our conversations, like it's always there. But speaking it out loud is another thing. So I think the goal of the statement was to say, listen, this is happening to us. It's also happening to our staff, and we have to speak about it. And in our conversation, he said, it's really hard to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish for their community when the staff is at a point where they have to be talked down when something happens to them. They can't accomplish things if they're always playing catch up to a toxic environment with its community members. And there's the other flip side to that as well, which is that the community is looking for transparency. They're looking for accountability. And in the era of the Meta News block, it is harder and harder to get information that is accurate and timely. And there has also been a shift in the trust for the media, people like us. Not necessarily grounded in fact, but it is a reality. People have lost trust in the institutions that provide news. So it's a perfect storm of misinformation and disinformation and a breakdown in public trust.
And then you can also understand the frustration of community members when they feel they're not being heard. And sometimes I think that is the argument that's made where things cross a line. They feel like there maybe aren't enough public meetings or things of the like where they can get their voices heard, and that's why they go to these levels. But nevertheless, these can be damaging for our communities, for democracy itself, that a lot of people don't consider running when they see this is the reality of how you are treated when you are in one of these roles. I know as members of the media, we can experience it at times ourselves, and especially in an online era, that can be really intimidating is one word at times I can think of, just exhausting when it's messages sent to you personally that aren't about your work, but are about you as a person. So I can understand that, but I can also understand community frustration in feeling like maybe you're not being heard, and sometimes people do cross the line.
Well, and there is certainly, merits to the fact that you should be able to to engage with your government and question your government. They're making decisions about your life, and so you should be part of that conversation, whether it's about healthcare, whether it's about education, whether it's about local zoning bylaws, whether it's about what the municipality is going to do with their budget. We have some budget consultations that are coming up in St. Stephen, so it's a bit of give and take. But when it turns personal, when it turns to showing up at events and speaking about a municipal leader's family members, or accosting family members in general at events or out in the public, that's where the line crosses over. And we know that the majority of people are not doing that. But there is a few that are doing it. And so at that point, it just becomes too much. And we have to start talking about it. The Canadian Municipal Barometer says 63% of the 1,633 respondents said they've experienced some sort of harassment in the last 24 months. So that's a lot, 63%. I know that the sample pool is small, but that's a lot of those respondents in particular.
And I know a term like harassment is quite broad, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering what exactly that encompasses. I know Mayor McEachern was on CTV this week with Avery McRae doing an interview, and he said some of the attacks were actually physical to staff and to members of council. Right,
and in that instance, they have to go to the police, right? This is, if you're attacking someone physically, that is assault. And so they have to go to the police, and that's a different conversation entirely. But I think that we've, in my time here, I've sort of noticed that we've lost our ability to respectfully disagree. Communities are never going to always be on the same page about the things that matter most to them. But I think, to Mayor McEachern's point, call and see, see where the conversation goes. Have a conversation with your representative from your ward, or call the mayor and have a conversation. It's easier than typing on a keyboard and sending it out into the, the vast land that is the internet and expecting results to come from that. Results don't come from Facebook posts. They come from having conversations and engagement with your municipal leaders.
And since we are our neighbors, I mean, we've seen this here in St. Andrews over the wharf debate. We've seen things that everyone who's following online can see how polarized it is, whether it's between people in municipal positions or just the community itself taking sides and really not being as neighborly as we'd like to see when we have these debates, because it does scare people from getting involved. I know a lot of people who are shared to scare their opinion on certain topics because they don't want to be subjected to what could be a backlash, particularly online. I feel like when we're in the grocery store, you don't see it the same way as you do online. It's like it's this entirely different universe that people live in, where they can be mean to people that they would be friendly or just ignore in a social setting in public. So that scares me a lot too, to think about those kind of things. Not that it hasn't gone the other way. Even in my time as a journalist, I've had municipal leaders not treat me the way I feel I should be treated. So I can understand the community frustration when you feel sometimes that, you need to hear more from them, or you don't even like the way you're being treated. We are all human, and I have had in my time municipal leaders cross a line I would not like to see crossed as well.
And there is work being done at the moment to develop legislation and policy around the harassment of local leaders and local administration staff. The Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick is currently accepting proposals for that type of policy that will be developed. It will be then presented to the various members of the Union of Municipalities for feedback and for consultation, and then they will formally develop that. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario has also done a similar call to action for proposals for an anti-harassment policy. You and I were discussing right before we went to air that Quebec actually has a penalty for the harassment of municipal officials and staff.
It's a very controversial penalty, I should say. It's $1,500, right. And I think a lot of media outlets even have spoken out against this, that this could actually be detrimental to dialogue on a municipal level. If you're fearing a $1,500 penalty, but nevertheless it's looking at something that's happening in Canada and one approach that might not be the right one for New Brunswick, but it's nevertheless where we're at. They saw a drop, I think since 2021, 10% of municipal leaders just decided to not do it anymore. And I can understand that. Even as a journalist, there are times you think, is this really worth it? Especially when it's so easy to harass someone, not just at their place of work or in public when you see them, but find them online. and really be able to say whatever you want to them publicly, whether it's just virtually or in private messages. It can be scary.
Well, and Dan Murphy said, you know, that this is an ongoing issue, and there are many members of their organization that have expressed that they will not be reoffering in 2026. So I'm going to be interested to see what that landscape looks like. How many people are going to put their name on the ballot, knowing what they know? How many people who are currently serving as a municipal leader will reoffer in 2026? And you're going to be losing all of that experience at the same time.
And it has there's a question of representation as well. When people are scared to run, it's often women, minorities that you don't see putting their name forward. And to me, that is a huge part of the problem as well, because that means representation around the council table just won't be there if this continues.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to take a look at a new search and rescue piece of equipment in Charlotte County.
It'll be tasked on any search and rescue call. It's not always a beautiful day like today, and usually on those not so nice days, that's when experienced crews and like we have with us today will be called upon to answer the call and deliver services to mariners in distress.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
We're now heading to the wharf in St. Andrews, where on Thursday you and Florence attended the launch of a new search and rescue vessel.
Well, first of all, I'm relieved to not be talking about the wharf itself. But yeah, so we went down to see the launch of the Passamaquoddy SAR, which stands for Search and Rescue Vehicle.
And how will this vessel work in terms of rescue missions in collaboration with the Coast Guard?
Yeah, so it's part of the Canadian Coast Guard's auxiliary program. So what that means is it's not actually part of their vessels, but it is part of an associated program that helps pay and helps train crews for. You'll know that the one of the Coast Guard's boats is actually docked at the St. Andrews Wharf.
Viola Davidson, I see it every night. Yeah.
But it is not a search and rescue vessel, and actually the nearest one is in St. John, so you can imagine that it takes a bit of time if there is a call for distress for that boat to arrive. And that's why the fire department is largely responding to issues on the water, and they're trained to do that, but not probably as comprehensively as members of the Coast Guard. So this is a partnership between the Canadian Coast Guard and the Passamaquoddy Nation.
So will this be stationed at the St. Andrews Wharf, or will it move around? It will be...
Yeah, so it'll be stationed at the St. Andrews Wharf, and it's basically a vessel that will respond to calls of distress for fishermen in the area. Anyone using the Passamaquoddy Bay on the water will be able to access this boat if necessary. It'll work in the same way that the volunteer fire department will. These people will have access to radios, and they will be called to do that service if they need it.
Okay, well, I'm very excited to learn more about it. I know here in the Bay of Fundy, with the highest tides in the world, there's even things like people being stranded on Minister's Island who didn't know to get off in time. Things like that I've seen happen as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this helps in those regards.
Yeah, and Harry Sapir was there today. He has been a big driving person behind this project and has been working on it for several years. We're going to let you take a listen to what he had to say on the wharf today.
So what happened here today is a lot of hard work that we see come to fruition. I've been working on this initiative for the last 4 years, trying to get funding in place. And once we collaborated with the Canadian Coast Guard and Coast Guard Auxiliary, you see here today that this is a big thing for us, for the nation, not just for the nation, but for the whole community as well.
Why is it important for this relationship between the Coast Guard and Indigenous communities? Well,
like I said, we're the first responders, right? And when there's a need, we're going to be there. This is the homeland of the Passamaquoddy.
And what's unique about the crew? I heard you mention up there that there's some uniqueness about this crew.
Well, I guess the uniqueness about it is they're all females. But they've taken extensive training. That's the big key for us, is to ensure everybody's safety, and including their own. So any individual that wants to participate in this initiative, We're at liberty to help provide proper training if they wanted to become members of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. We're open to the idea because this is a initiative that's voluntary. So in the event some of my individuals are not available, hopefully more will be. Close to the area, quicker response time. That's a big thing for us, is being able to respond to incidents.
The Coast Guard, and you mentioned that, the nearest boat previous to this boat was in St. John. Do you think it gives, people who are enjoying the Passamaquoddy Bay and fishermen a peace of mind that this boat is here and available to them if something happens?
It should. I mean, speaking just in relation to the fire department here, they've had several calls, in relation to kayakers in distress or something along those lines. And they're the ones that are responding because the response coming from St. John is far too long. So they're responding in little dinghy boats and stuff like that. And here we are with a $750,000 asset ready to respond.
Can you just tell me a little bit about the boat specifically? What is it? What are the specifications for it?
It's a 9-meter interceptor. It's a little different than the Zodiacs. We're able to maneuver into water that's got higher waves and stuff along those lines. The boat is built for those kind of conditions.
Okay. Is there anything else that you can think of you want to add on this partnership, the boat, anything like that?
No, I think for myself, just seeing the boat task for the first time, and I guess I'll feel a lot better once we know that the boat is going to be doing its job.
That was Harry Sapir of the Passamaquoddy Nation talking about the Passamaquoddy SAR vessel. And what's interesting about this crew is it does have a male captain, but all of its crew members are female.
Wow. So did you get to meet them as well? I'm very much looking forward to reading this news story and seeing it next week.
Yeah, I absolutely got to meet them very briefly. They actually gave us a demonstration of the boat. They all got on board, they put their life vests on, and they took the boat out for us to show its speed, to show its capabilities, and to show that, taking a turn really fast. It's a fast boat, which is most likely what you want to see as part of this effort. But it was important also to see representatives from the Canadian Coast Guard there as part of the unveiling of this boat. That's a partnership that exists because there are actually auxiliary boats across the country that are partnerships between the Canadian Coast Guard and Indigenous communities.
Wow, okay, well I've seen this boat at the wharf for the last few weeks at least, and I wondered if maybe this was what it was, but now I know for sure. So that is exciting news, and what a wonderful addition to the community.
Absolutely, and we have strong connections in Charlotte County to the Passamaquoddy people, and our St. Andrews mayor, acting mayor, is a member of the Passamaquoddy Nation. So this is a very important symbolic thing, but also such a vital piece of equipment for this region and for a region that relies heavily on boating and fishing and all of the things that are related to the water. Our lives are intricately tied to the ocean, and so it's very important to have this piece of equipment here. Take a listen to what the Assistant Commissioner for the Canadian Coast Guard for the Atlantic region had to say about the partnership between them and the Passamaquoddy Nation.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting day for the Coast Guard. We're here today to welcome into service one of the new Indigenous community boats, and this new vessel was purchased as part of our Indigenous community boat program, where boats are purchased in cooperation with some of the Indigenous communities, and here the local First Nation and Passamaquoddy, and really looking forward to seeing it come into service. It will form part of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, which is a vital part of how Coast Guard does search and rescue in the land of Canada and all across the country. We have a lot of different assets, and working with communities and Coast Guard Auxiliary is vital to Coast Guard from being able to deliver our safety mandate on the water.
And what exactly will it do?
It'll be a search and rescue vessel if there's any case. So if anybody gets in trouble on the water and calls for help, calls through the regular channels. If you're a mariner and you're on channel 16, but some people use the cell phone, and we'll dial 911 and we'll get connected to our Joint Rescue Coordination Center, and they'll determine where the incident is, and they'll task out Coast Guard assets, and Coast Guard Auxiliary is spread so much throughout all the coastal communities in Atlantic Canada and here in New Brunswick as well. So it'll be tasked on any search and rescue call. It's not always a beautiful day like today, and usually on those not so nice days, that's when experienced crews and like we have with us today will be called upon to answer the call and deliver services to mariners in distress.
Before this particular boat, what would have been the closest vessel for search and rescue?
Well, there is, as you can see if you can walk around the docks here, there are other Coast Guard Auxiliary, but sometimes they're primary fishers, or they're into other industries such as maybe a tourism industry or pleasure craft. So we didn't have a dedicated community or Coast Guard asset in this community. We had Coast Guard science vessels and conservation protection vessels that would work here, but the closest dedicated Coast Guard full-time vessel is in St. John.
And how important is it to build those relationships between the Coast Guard and local Indigenous communities?
That's super important for the Coast Guard. We're very much stewards of the same environment from Indigenous communities. The Coast Guard, our mandate is the safety of life, the prevention of pollution, and a big part of that is enabling the economy in Canada and Atlantic Canada. So it all goes hand in hand, and being able to partner with the local community here has been special. We've been doing a lot of training, a lot of exercising, and it was great to get on board the vessel this morning, talk to the crew. They're super excited as well to be part of this. I know they've already started forming relations with other first responder organizations, fire department, and other first responders who are interested in becoming part of that marine community. And that's really our goal, is to keep mariners safe. And this vessel will go a long way in doing that. And it really is a big addition to the local community.
Yeah, and Charlotte County has a rich fishing history, but also a lot of pleasure crafts, as you mentioned. How important do you think that peace of mind will be that this vessel is here and available to them in case something happens?
It very much is, as you mentioned, a huge benefit to the area, and we've already heard from some of the other mariners in the area that it's nice to know, because sometimes a bit of bad luck, there's a mechanical issue or bad weather and something unexpected happens, and it's good to know that we have a trained crew and a very able vessel. That 9-meter vessel there is state of the art, and it'll be ready to respond in case of any emergencies on the water.
Anything else you can think of you want to add?
No, just very, very happy to be here. The Coast Guard really values the relations that we have with the coastal communities, and this new community boat is really just going to be another area where we can continue to work together and benefit local New Brunswickers, local First Nations, and Canadians at large. So just a great day to be here. Thank you.
That was the Assistant Commissioner of the Canadian Coast Guard for the Atlantic region. We will be right back with more of This Week Uncut, including part of our interview with the former mayor of Gander, Claude Elliott, talking about his time after 9/11 and the musical his community inspired, Come From Away.
It brings you back. No matter how many times you see the show, it brings you back to those 5 days that those people were in Gander.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to attend the New Brunswick premiere of Come From Away at Kira Amphitheatre right here in St. Andrews. I can go on and on about the musical, but everyone should go see it. It'll be at the Imperial Theatre in St. John in September as well. But what a fabulous, fabulous musical to see, really, in Atlantic Canada, where it was inspired. But what was extra special about going to the premiere was that Claude Elliott, the former mayor of Gander, at the time of 9/11, was there in the audience, and I knew he was there. So I didn't know if I should be watching the musical itself or watching him watch a musical about the community that inspired the musical. So it was an unbelievable experience, and what was even more unbelievable was that I got a message on Saturday from Chris Bridger from The Huntsman right here in St. Andrews, who said, would you want to stop by for an interview? Of course, you don't even have to ask. Turns out Chris Bridger is the nephew of Claude Elliott. So what a special experience, what an amazing tie to our own community. But getting to sit down with him and just talk about what it was like and how his community responded was really one of my favorite interviews I think I've ever had the chance to do. And it's really beautiful when someone from a small community can inspire the entire world.
It was so, that moment in time was extraordinary. The Twin Towers had been hit, flights were being grounded, and actually little old Canada ended up being the place where many of those flights ended up finding a place to stay. And as he mentioned, a community, I think of 9,000 became home to an additional 7,000 people. So it was such an extraordinary moment in time.
He said on the first day there were 7,000 strangers. On the third day, 7,000 friends. And on the fifth day, it was 7,000 family members that they had to say goodbye to after. And so many of them stayed in touch. And I think what's interesting is this musical hasn't even been out 10 years. The writers went to Gander on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, and that's when the inspiration for it really started. So it hasn't been that long that it's really been out on the global stage like this. And it was Friday night was the 127th time Claude had watched Come From Away. And he said it never gets old. It always brings back memories. He's also watched it in Spain, different countries around the world have seen it translated. So it's incredible to see this Atlantic Canadian story inspire so many and continue to be told, even though, next year will be the 25th anniversary of 9/11. It's hard to believe it's been almost a quarter century. But still, this story of Come From Away. He said the story isn't a 9/11 story, it's a 9/12 story. It's what happened after. And on 9/11, we saw the greatest tragedy that many of us had seen in our lifetime, and he said on September 12th, we saw the best of humanity. So
yeah, there was moments in that interview that were so funny that I was watching. He talked about how they didn't really have a lot of diverse food in Newfoundland, right? When you think Newfoundland, you think stew and cabbage and corned beef and cabbage, and you think of all of the very Atlantic Canadian staples, and he said they all accepted what they had. Mm-hmm. They ate what they had because this was the place that they were going to be until they couldn't be there anymore. And actually, my favorite part of doing this story with you was when you wrote it for the Courier, and you reached out to the 9/11 Memorial Museum, and you got some of the photos from Gander, and it was so cool to see the photo of the planes lined up on the runway, to see people arm in arm with each other, to see flight manifestos or flight tickets that were from Americans who had come from other parts of North America. It was just so fun to see that part of it. And I know that it's such a tragic thing, but it was just such a light for something that was so dark at the moment.
Proof that in those moments of extreme turmoil, we can rise to the occasion if given the opportunity. And in this case, I know this could sound cliche, but it can never be oversaid, is that, ordinary people can do extraordinary things and inspire these tales that we continue to tell. And Claude said to me off camera, I wish we had this on camera, he said, you didn't ask me the question I get asked the most. And I said, oh, how did I miss that? He said, but it's because you're Canadian. He said, everybody else asks, is this really true? And I'm also an Atlantic Canadian, so I know what our people are capable of. So I thought it was actually to my credit that I didn't ask that question. Of course it was true.
Well, I would have asked personally whether there was any kitchen parties. I personally think there's nothing more Atlantic Canadian than a good old kitchen party. So I'm sure that there was. I'm sure that they were all looking for a moment of brevity in that situation, and there's nothing more joyful than gathering around the kitchen and sharing stories and sharing music. And I'm sure there was some spoons and some violins.
Well, if you get to see Come From Away, you'll find out that a man from the UK and a lady from the South in the United States ended up falling in love in Gander. They went back there for their honeymoon. Many of the people from spending those 5 days in Gander, people from 95 countries, Claude said too. There were 95 countries represented in those 7,000 passengers that arrived there and felt stranded there. And it's honestly the most incredible musical I've ever seen. I know that we are a bit biased. We are from this part of the world, so to see it told like that really makes you realize how special we are in this part of Canada. But really, to have him sit down and tell these stories and hear firsthand from him what it was like was just really one of the highlights of my life. And it was neat to reach out, like you said, to the 9/11 Memorial in New York and have them send right away these beautiful photos from that time in Gander. And Tony Lepage, who plays Kevin in the musical, who is the original cast member in Come From Away, who is part of Rogue Productions with his wife Courtney, and they brought it here to New Brunswick, plays Kevin, who is from LA. In the musical, and he will actually be at the second week of it here at Kira Amphitheater. Kevin, the real Kevin, is coming to share some of his memories with Tony, who plays him in the musical.
What an extraordinary thing to have the very people who experienced it, who lived through it. The guy from Los Angeles who ended up stranded in Gander, Newfoundland, and it is unique. Atlantic Canada is built a bit different. We're an extraordinary place in the world that is full of kindness and full of strength. And we were a part of the strength in that moment. And I'm very glad that you were able to have that conversation with him. And I'm glad that our audience is now able to listen to his side of the story.
Here's a little bit of our interview with Claude Elliott, the former mayor of Gander, Newfoundland.
It brings you back. No matter how many times you see the show, it brings you back to those 5 days that those people were in Gander. I mean, we had 7,000 people. And I always say on the first day we had 5,000 strangers. On the third day we had 7,000 friends. And on the fifth day we lost 7,000 family members. We became very close to those people. They became close to us. And there was other communities too that had took passengers, like Gamble, Lewisport, Norris's Arm, Gamble, Appleton. They all took some passengers to help the load off of Gander. So everybody had the same experience in Gander, in all those communities of kindness and generosity to complete strangers. We had people from 95 countries. So trying to, there's lots of food in Newfoundland, but there wasn't a lot of diverse foods for different countries and that. But they tried a lot of the local stuff, and everybody accepted, what we had to give them. And like I said, it became not a chore, but it became a pleasure. To help people, considering that our world took a turn on the 11th. Our story is 9/12, not 9/11. And, we saw on the 11th of September, we saw the worst act of mankind, but on the 12th, we saw the best of it. And I think that goodness and generosity will outdo evil any time at all.
I could see where you were sitting from where I was watching Come From Away at Kira Amphitheater. I didn't know sometimes whether I should watch the stage or watch you watching someone portray you.
Yeah.
It was a pretty special experience, one I'll never forget. When did you find out that there were two Canadian writers looking into telling this story of how Gander responded and the way that your community did?
It was on the 10th anniversary. The gentleman in Toronto by the name of Michael Rubinoff, he was the brainchild, I think, behind Come From Away. He saw a story, and he managed to get a grant from the federal government for this young couple to come to Gander for 3 months to interview people. And they did come to Gander, and I know the first day they were in my office for about 6 hours, and they said they were going to do a musical. And I had to be honest with them, prior to that, I had never seen a musical. And I'm trying to visualize in my mind, musical to me is about music. And they're going to make a musical about sandwiches and soups and pillows and blankets. And I found it very hard to comprehend that was going to, how you're going to do that. And I remember saying to the town manager when they left, I said, I felt sorry for that young couple. They're going to end up on welfare. But I guess the difference was they knew what they were doing. And to me, they put together a remarkable story. And they showed what the town did, but they also showed what the passengers were going through and how the passengers reacted. And they touched on a little bit of everything. But there's enough stories in Gander to do 4 Come From Aways. There's stories that never ever been told by people who took people into their homes and did things. So, and they wanted to do it straight through. They didn't want no intermission because they figured it would lose its impact. And it's 100 minutes long, and I tell you, it's audience all over the world is just it's amazing to respond. I mean, I saw it in Madrid, Spain, where it was done in Spanish, and you know the people there, they were clapping long before that it finished. They were, you know, just grabbing onto this show. So if it can do good to the world and good to people, then we got to keep playing it.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about some of the characters, some of the real life people some of the characters were based on. And I told you before we started filming, my brother recognized you on the street yesterday. He would not recognize George Clooney or Brad Pitt if they walked by. He recognized you.
Well, I'm in pretty good company then.
It's immortalized,
Right.
these real life people from a small town in this exceptional way. But tell us a little bit about some of the real life people who inspired it.
Well, the Nick and Diane, they were. Well, Nick was, he was from England. He was on his way to Houston for a hall conference, and she was in London visiting her son, and she was on the way home, and the flight got diverted to Gander, and they met. They were both staying in the same shelter, and they met there, and as they say, as the 5 days went on, they fell in love and ended up, you know, when he went back to London, and then she went to Houston, but they got started. He moved to Houston and got married, and they honeymooned back in Newfoundland, and so that was good. And Beverly Bass, she was the airline, American airline captain, and she was in Gander. Now she had flown through Gander many times as a pilot, and so you know. She come back with her family and visited Gander, and comes back every now and then. And then now Hannah, the lady from the Queens in New York that lost her son, unfortunately Anna passed away 2 weeks ago. So, but she was quite the lady. She was. Once you know her, you'd never forget her. She was very compassionate. And she made a friend with Beulah in Gander, Beulah Cooper, who took her in, and so they became closer than sisters. So you know, then you had Nick and the gay couple. They were in Gander, and you know, back then I guess you know they weren't sure how gay people were going to be accepted in the community and everything, but. Even the people that disagree with it still treat them as human beings, and they still look after you and forget what you are. You're a human being, and you need to be looked after and be part. And so we've all become very close friends. I mean, Janice and Brian Mosier, the Janice Mosier combination. Janice was a young reporter with the Gander Beacon. It was her first day on the job. And you can imagine, she was, I don't know, 19 or 20 years old, and you know, and get thrown into this. And Brian Mosier was a teacher at Gander Collegiate, and he used to teach media, and he used to volunteer with Rogers. And so they combined, because as you know in the show, they play multiple characters. So that got thrown into one. It's called Janice Mosier. Then we had Bonnie Harris with the SPCA. She was the lady who looked after all the animals that was aboard the planes and that. And Diane Davis was the teacher at Gander Academy. And Beulah Cooper was with the Ladies Auxiliary at the Legion. And Beulah was the one in charge of make sure food and everything got there. So they combined that, and they called it's Beulah Davis. So they put two of the characters together, and you know, it just made. And then Durham Flynn, who was the mayor of Appleton, they had people out there, and they had a barbecue and stuff that. So Durham and myself are sharing the same thing, and that's all. And then you know we move on in. There's people that's portrayed in the show that's not like there's characters like Bob was the guy from down in New York and that. So, but we've all kept them pretty close over the last, this last 15 years. And with social media now, it's a great way to entertain. And I'm sure when I get home, I'll have to let Beverly and Nick and Diane know. They want to know how things go and how their characters work. So we'll be talking.
That was Claude Elliott, the former mayor of Gander, Newfoundland. Now we're heading over to St. Stephen, where you have an update on the NCDC teams that we had scheduled coming to Charlotte County, but it looks like we have an update on exactly what will come into play, I guess quite literally this fall.
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a roller coaster for the two teams that were planned for Charlotte County. At the outset, the owner, Ted Colley, the former owner, Ted Colley, had the Eastern Charlotte Kingfishers, who were going to go to Blacks Harbor, and the St. Croix Seawolves that were going to go to the Garceland Civic Center in St. Stephen. That has all changed.
Okay.
So the Eastern Charlotte Kingfishers have been sold to another U.S. owner. They will play out of Maine. And the ownership is, I believe, an ownership that does own multiple teams in multiple locations in the U.S. So a strong ownership in the United States. But the National Collegiate Development Conference, which is what NCDC stands for, has been able to maintain one of those teams here in Charlotte County. Now, under new ownership, it has been rebranded to the County Moose. And as far as I'm aware, the owner is a silent owner, and they've developed a board that will help operate this team. And they've been consistently sharing information on social media about what their jerseys are going to look like, when season tickets will go on sale. So we were able to reach to a spokesperson for the team who said they did rebrand under a new owner. Season tickets will begin to become available very soon. And the first season opener is scheduled for September 19th.
September 19th, so really coming up. I know it's sad. We were all excited to have this rivalry, this fun, friendly rivalry between Eastern Charlotte and St. Stephen, but I feel like now as a county, we can get behind the County Moose and all get our jerseys and really have some fun at these games at the Garceland Civic Center.
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate enough that my partner Liam is an extraordinary hockey fan, and so he was picking the Eastern Charlotte Kingfishers. So I was worried about having to tell the various mayors whose side I had picked. So I'm glad that I don't have to do that, and we can all go to St. Stephen and we can all enjoy some junior hockey together.
Yeah, I was going to pick the jersey that I just thought was prettier. That's the team I was going to root for. But this will be fun nonetheless. Sad, I'm sure, for Eastern Charlotte to feel that was coming to the community, and but you never know in the future these things could, if it could have happened this year, maybe this means down the road something else could come to fruition.
Yeah, and junior hockey did exist in Charlotte County before, and I believe the team has since been sold and exists now as the Fredericton Red Wings. So junior hockey has lived here before. But one of the quotes that sticks out in my mind, and I wrote it down because I wanted to say it again, this is a start of a new era of county hockey, and we look forward to welcoming you to the rink this season. So it's an exciting time. They are looking for billet families.
Yes.
So I do want to I want to stress this. They're looking for billet families, which are families that will take in a junior hockey player for the duration of the season. You receive compensation every month for that accommodation, and you get season tickets for free. So it's worth it.
It is.
And you also get to help develop a young hockey mind. So it's an interesting time for the community, but they do need billet families. So
I'm going to give a shout out right now to my Uncle Jim and Aunt Lynn who live in St. Stephen. And at the time of the Aces, they used to have 2 billets. And I loved going over for dinner because I don't follow a lot of hockey. I should try harder. Maybe this year, maybe this will get me into it. But my Uncle Jim used to be my Aces correspondent for CHCO. He would send me pictures. He went to all the games. And I think one of the billets was even in one of our recycling commercials.
Well, and given Liam's interest in hockey, I may end up becoming your Moose correspondent, whether I like it or not. So, but I love spending time at an arena. There's nothing quite like sitting in the stands of an arena. So I'm sure we'll be there. We'll be taking lots of pictures, and we'll be supporting what local hockey has to offer this economy, this community. I'm very excited for them.
Oh my gosh, I'm just excited to have a team that our whole county can get behind and come together as a community, watch the games at the Garceland. What an amazing facility. So we will have fun this fall. I know it's disappointing right now for Eastern Charlotte Charlotte, but I have a feeling a bunch of us will be road tripping over to the Garceland just to take this all in.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to discuss what we're up to next week.
Municipal plans outline the at least 10-year framework and policy for the development of land and relevant changes to municipal bylaws, budgets, land infrastructure, facilities, services, grants, and/or programs.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
We are looking ahead to next week. I can't believe it's Labor Day and school is back. And that means things kind of go back to normal. In a weird way here, I find we're a little less busy. There's less festivals and things like that to cover on the weekend. Not that a lot of the fun stuff kind of starts to dissipate, but it is fall. We've got Pumpkin Fest coming up, all kinds of things.
Yeah, I've been working here for a year. Nothing ever slows down. That's not true. So we do have lots of things that we're going to be working on. I do want to say we will be working on a story about the municipal plan in St. Andrews, which is a 10-year guiding document that governs the development of land, but it's a lot more than that. Some of the policies in it can shed light on budgeting and zoning and all the things. And so given what we've learned about the participation of the wharf and participation in general in public consultations for the municipal government, we're going to provide you with the information for these open houses, which are open to the public. You can go, you can talk to your leaders, you can talk to town staff, you can talk to the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission about the things in this plan. I would encourage you to read it. It's a lengthy, dense document, but it does define how you can live in your community and the development of land. So the first meeting is Thursday, September 4th, 6 to 8 p.m. in person at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex, the building we're in right now, in the dining room. The second meeting is Wednesday, September 10th, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. in person at the Bayside Community Hall. So that's 349 Highway 127 in Bayside. Meeting 3 is Thursday, September the 11th, 6 to 8 p.m. in person at the Atlantic Salmon Federation Nature Center at 24 Shamcook Line, number 1 Road in Shamcook. The fourth meeting, which is on Wednesday, September the 17th, is a virtual, and you can register at www.townofstandrews.ca. So these information sessions are very important. This is where you ask your questions. This is where you provide feedback, and that feedback will be given to the council in making their final decision about this very important document.
Okay, so we're going to keep repeating that over and over again. So please, everyone, you definitely heard about it. I hate when we hear, oh, I didn't hear about it, and we've been talking about it for a while. I am going to be looking at the Terry Fox Run for this year next week. I'll have more information to share then, but we're going to get a look at what's on schedule, not just across Canada, but right here in our area. Also, I sat down with Alex Neve. He is a graduate of Sir James Dunn Academy. He's an international human rights lawyer and this year's Massey lecturer across Canada. So he came in for half an hour. That show's not out yet. It will be in the days ahead. And it's a really, really great conversation. We ended up going overtime because there was just so much to cover. You know, topics like Israel, Palestine. I know we do local news here. We don't really delve into topics like that. Nevertheless, it's things that are on people's minds, and you have sometimes a hard time of figuring out how to navigate something that is complicated and nevertheless feels like it's something you can't ignore. We also talked about what's happening in the United States right now that's really close to home. So how human rights are in question for the trans community right now in the US and things like that. So we talked about a lot of really serious topics, but I think it'll shed a lot of light on how we can navigate those even when we don't know if it's our place to put an opinion out into the world, or maybe you're just scared of how to approach it. So
yeah, I mean, I won't say too much because I'm sure we're going to discuss it after it comes out, but it was just a fascinating conversation. I like when we get to talk to people who are kind of at the heart of these issues, because we talk about them, you know, here at the station and when we're having social conversations, but it was a very fascinating conversation, so I'm excited for other people to see it as well.
Yes, and I will have Ted Michener. He is a familiar face, not just in Charlotte County and CHCO, but he's also our cartoonist at The Courier, has been for years. That's why we were so excited to have him back when we brought back The Courier. I am going to give everyone the first preview of Ted's new book. This is Ted's tunes, and he wrote this while he was receiving his chemo treatments, when he was undergoing cancer treatment. So it's a cancer patient's look on the brighter side through doodlings. My eyes are bad when I don't have my glasses on. But that will be special to sit down with Ted, and it really is just all the comics he did while he was going through his cancer treatment. So I think that will mean a lot to a lot of people. Cancer touches all of our lives in some way. So I'm looking forward to hearing how this book came to life and learning more about his journey in cancer care as well.
Yeah, Ted's a fantastic cartoonist. He's funny, he's provocative, he's everything you would want in a cartoonist for a newspaper. And some of his artwork is actually available at the Nautical Shop. If you go all the way back to the back of the store, you can purchase some of his artwork there. So wonderful.
Always a great time sitting down with you today, and I thank you all for joining us at home as well. We'll see you next week on This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.